Well, in that case, my name is Jason Green, and I'm joined by Jared Gates, and we are presenting Talos, a company dedicated to helping solve some of the biggest issues surrounding coronavirus. So to start, every day, over 5 million healthcare workers are going to hospitals around the country. As the coronavirus develops, their potential exposure to the virus and their chance of catching it greatly increases. In New York City alone, over 20% of the paramedics that bring patients in are unable to work, mainly due to having caught the virus themselves. When these workers get off work, though, many of them have one thing in common. They all get in their cars. Now, they follow proper procedures at the hospitals and remove their protective equipment at the hospital, but they have to put their clothes back on and travel home. And so when they get home, proper procedure is to undress and immediately shower and scrub themselves as well as wash their clothes. This is usually safe enough of a practice to stop themselves and their loved ones from contracting the virus. However, there's one link in the chain of returning home that has proven to be a major problem, and that is the car, specifically the interior. These workers have to get back into their car the next day, get back to work, to go to the grocery store, or anywhere else they might have to go to. The problem with the car is that many have circulating air systems as well as common high-touch areas such as steering wheels, stick shifts, seats, and door handles. Now, simply wiping all of these surfaces down is not a strong enough solution to combat the potential spread of the virus around the car. On top of that, what if that's the only car that family has? And this is where it extends to not only healthcare workers, right? What about the millions of Americans that still go to the grocery store every day? Almost all of them use a car to get there. And beyond that, you have people everywhere who still need to commute somewhere on the daily. And many of these people are quite scared of catching the coronavirus. Now, this brings us back to the problem of sanitizing cars. All of these people, hospital workers and citizens alike, account for over 276 million cars in the United States. What does every one of these cars have? They have this groundbreaking feat of modern technology called the cup holder, right? And now you've seen them, you've used them every day for everything from keys, wallets, coins, you name it. There's one main vessel that is often stored in them, water bottles. And now, so why I bring this into the discussion of combating the coronavirus is this cylindrical style of container is able to fit into a standard size cup holder and is a great form factor for our solution, right? So keep in mind the form factor of a water bottle. Now take the top half of that water bottle and make it a UVC bulb. A UVC bulb at a certain intensity is strong enough to sterilize a 20-foot radius for about 20 to 30 minutes. Then take the bottom half of that water bottle and make it a battery for the UVC bulb, right? So now that water bottle style vessel is placed in the car, and when the user gets out to go inside, they turn the device on and the light sterilizes the car. After the device runs its cycle, the user can safely come back out and take the device out of the car, take it inside, and plug it in. So now this is seems to be a pretty simple idea to execute, and you're probably wondering why no one has come up with this before. Well, they have, just not in this form factor. So hospitals have started using these large UV towers, which is the photo here on the left, to sterilize rooms quickly. However, you clearly can't stick this into a car. The other are these UVC wands that you can buy, but they lack the consistency of the towers and do not do a good job of sterilizing, mainly due to being a constantly moving object. And when compared to their bigger brothers in hospitals, because of this, they are grossly ineffective. So we are basically trying to take these two form factors, taking the best of both worlds and combining them. We're taking the strong sterilization as well as the stable consistency of the hospital UVC towers and combining it with the portability and affordability of the wands. And so that leads us to cost. And this is where I'll let Jared take over.
First of all, can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, thank you. So cost is relative, simple to break down. With the current pandemic, it comes down to more of sourcing the parts than the actual cost of the parts. With that said, to start, you have the battery. These will most likely end up being a form of a light battery. And second, you have the UVC light, which is a house-style light bulb with a very strong intensity. Third and lastly, you have the housing and wiring and the charger. That's essentially all you need to build a device. And the roadmap for this is as far as getting the device built and getting our first sales, we are looking at about a 2-month window. First, we have to get the specific parts and design our proof of concept. Then once we actually get proof of the concept, we have to start creating and work on a consistent model. And then once we achieve that, it is a matter of marketing and making sales, and then finally continuing production. So at that time, does anyone have any questions?
I guess I'll jump in. I'm kind of smiling because I'm sounds like a conversation we recently had. So how do you guys address shadowing? I guess I'll stop at that first question. I obviously could talk about this topic for a long time. How would you guys address shadowing in different areas of the car?
Jason, can I take this one here? Because there's a little bit of a lag. Can I take this question?
Yeah, well, I can take this one. So like, right. as far as shadowing goes, right? Like we're mainly focusing on the driver's side seat. So ideally, most cars have a cup holder that's in the center console and has a direct light source or viewpoint towards the seat, the steering wheel, and the door, and as well as the center console. So those are kind of the high touch areas we'd be targeting. So anything like the gas pedal, brake, you're not really going to be as worried about those kind of areas, right? So
I have a question.
Yes.
What would be your statement for quality control that it clearly eliminates a certain percentage of the virus?
Well, so we're basically going off of known bulbs that people will put in their houses, right? So like a 60-watt bulb that has an average voltage of like 110. That's been proven to sterilize like about a 20-foot area over an extended period of time. And so we're basically using that model and just instead of running it off of a house power source, we're trying to put it in a car on a mobile power source. If that makes sense.
Katie?
Or so does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
So I have a kind of two-part question. First off, I'm going with the assumption that you are assuming your customer is the healthcare worker. Have you thought about that a little bit more in depth with regards to, could it be a car manufacturer? Could it be bigger, right? And is it like, what is your what is your plan to really make sure you know who your customer is?
Okay, well, I think personally, after this
Go ahead.
whole COVID-19, yes, we are targeting the healthcare workers, but this could realistically be used for anyone who owns a vehicle, because I think the mindset of, the majority of the population is going to change after this with, cleanliness and making sure that surfaces are clean. So, and as far as moving forward, what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
So it was like, have you established who your customer is and have you thought bigger about it?
I can take that a little bit. Right. So like basically like we're looking at like a known problem of the contamination in a car, right? Like there's a certain customer base in the United States that has that problem. They may not realize they have that problem, right? Like I stated with the 276 million cars, like those cars are a catalyst for spreading the disease, whether people know it or not. So that's basically our target market. Now, because of the current problem, and it's a problem now, of the coronavirus, we're trying to look at getting a relatively easy to manufacture solution to those people as quickly as we can, right? So at the long end, if it doesn't work out, and so we're not doing a lot of product management ahead of time to like see like, okay, are people going to buy this? We're trying to create the product, and because it's relatively easy to make, right? Like I can make it right here with the parts and then show people, okay, I can do this. And if that's something they're going to be interested in, great. If not, then we have an attempt at trying to make the current situation in the country a little better, right? So that's kind of been our thinking.
Okay, so second question, what is your business model? Is it direct to consumer? Is it to the wholesaler? Have you thought through that?
As far as like business model, we're kind of looking at it as like a parts in versus revenue out. So however much it takes to make it, and then so if it's like say $80 to make it, we sell it at 100 or so. That's basically our business model at this point. We're not like, we're trying to make it sustainable enough that where we can keep making it, but we're not trying to like pigeonhole and like make a lot of money off of these people. We're trying to provide us. So we're looking more at like bringing in enough revenue per unit to actually make enough of a profit to keep manufacturing the product.
Okay.
I want to let's drill down on the problem a little bit. You said that you know it's a problem, right? Have you guys talked to anybody in the medical field about that problem? What do they think about it? Is it something that's on their radar as I got to clean my car?
Well, I mean, the main source we've talked to is actually the other Jason in here. But I mean, it's as far as a idea of a problem, right? Like it's pretty simple to pin down. Okay, like let's say somebody gets into a car, they have the virus. It doesn't even have to be the coronavirus. It could be anything, right? And they're breathing in that car. The car is circulating air around that system. Now a large portion of that car could be potentially contaminated, right? So kind of what I was saying, like that's just, I mean, you can prove that just with a basic logic, right? Like if they're touching the steering wheel, if they've just coughed on their hand, that steering wheel is now a potential candidate to infect somebody else. So we're looking at it more as that versus going out and actively trying to get like, okay, like this doctor says that could be a potential problem. This doctor says that could be a potential problem, right? Like it just makes sense. Like if you touch a surface, you're sick, that surface is more than likely contaminated now. So.
And I agree. You're asking somebody to invest in a product, but you said they might not even know it's a problem. So having somebody tell them it's a problem might be something that might help us out.
Right.
Yeah, adding to that.
And so also, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
To
No,
the problem
go
with
ahead.
the customer, I know you talked about how do you get to you got to figure the components and things go in it, but have you thought about what is a price? And this is somewhat talking to the customer. What could this marketplace afford? And so what's your target that says we need to be able to produce this at this? And because what you're aiming at is you're aiming at a group that's many of these people are not going to be in the high income categories just to be able to afford the product.
Right. So I think it really comes down to yes, income is a factor, right? Half of the country doesn't have more than $400 in savings pre pandemic, but if you, I mean, all you have to do is go on eBay and see how much people are still buying. I mean, people are buying video game controllers for like over $100 right now, right? So like it really comes down to the people that can buy it are if they're prioritize it as a need. So, and that's something we still have to figure out. But we're going off the presumption that with the panic, it being a pandemic, that products that could potentially help somebody not get sick, to a lot of people, that's going to be a priority as far as money out. So.
Have you guys, this is Jason, I'll chime in. I'm purposely trying not to chime in too much because I obviously have a lot of knowledge about this entire space. Have you guys researched how much wattage and dosage you guys can achieve with one battery? And how many batteries does your competitive wand use? How long does it take to get a certain amount of kill? I think there's going to be a lot of questions, obviously, you're going to need to flush out, but how much wattage can you get out of a AA battery? Do you have any idea?
Well, okay, so the just to start off, like the AA battery that I showed, that was just a kind of a placeholder. We'd be looking at more of like a lithium polymer battery. But from what I've identified, a 60-watt bulb, a UVC bulb, is strong enough to over a 20 to 30 minute period of time is enough to make a significant difference in whether that, say, car is contaminated or not. So now it's just a matter of finding a battery strong enough to sustain that bulb for 20 to 30 minutes, which is, I think, pretty reasonable. It's really a matter of if it's going to fit. So.
We have just under 2 minutes more for questions. Go ahead, Connie, you're on mute.
I think, I applaud you for seizing the opportunity right now with the motion and also doing research to see that things will be changing. Maybe a thought or a suggestion on distribution of the product, maybe a scenario of selling to individuals, but doing it through employer-based. Have you considered that, to say this is one additional tool that, healthcare facility may provide their employee, and look at a different size of market?
I mean, no, we haven't really looked at that yet, but that's actually a really good idea. This is still like a relatively new idea that we have. But yeah, no, it's actually a really good idea. Go ahead, Jason, whatever you got to say.
Yeah, I was basically going to say that, like, right now we're just trying to get a proof of concept. So, right, like, so if we can prove, and I think it's going to be pretty reasonable to assemble something like this, if we can prove that we can make it, I think that's a relative next step. And we're kind of almost trying to push this as fast as we can, because obviously there's a current problem that keeps getting worse by the day. So we're trying to answer a lot of those questions as we go. So we don't have particularly like the specific answer to that, like our first customer, but we're still working on that, basically.
Okay, that is the end of the Q&A session. So now we have 10 minutes for judging. And excuse me, if each judge wants to take a couple minutes, I think that would be good. Whoever would like to start first.
I guess I'll start. The UVC guy will start. So I applaud you guys for taking some of our discussion and turning it into kind of a hypothesis of where a product can land. You know, I think you gotta take a step back though. There's so many pitfalls of what you're trying to do, and I'll just call out the first one. The first one is, what is the status quo? The status quo is a really cheap hand sanitizer, right? Or a quick spray, a quick wipe that you can wipe these high touch areas. The reason I asked the question about shadowing is because have you heard of the term diffuse reflectivity, diffuse reflection? That's basically the ability it's the ability to like reflect light from a surface. So your value proposition is talking about, you know, sterilizing or disinfecting like the surface of your car seat, potentially the handles of a steering wheel. But if your source of light is sitting in your cup holder and you got your steering wheel like this, the light is going to only kill what it sees. So the light is going to hit this edge of the steering wheel and then the inner edge of this part of the steering wheel. What it will not do is kill the inside of this edge and the outside of this edge, nor will it kill soft surfaces like a chair, like a seat, a cushion. So there's a lot of research you're going to have to start undertaking when it comes to UV in this application. I applaud your effort to go down this path. I can help you vet these things out clearly offline. I think the thing I like about it, just shifting gears, is I think the heightened awareness of the population could gravitate to something like this. It's kind of gimmicky, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's a kind of product that you could see. You know, if you hear the website like Touch of Modern, you know, I love that website. I always get an email every day that shows me these cool high-tech things. I could see a product like this going into that, and someone that just kind of gets the emotional side of that, even though someone like myself is probably going to be like, I'm not going to buy that because it doesn't make sense. You know, so there's so much customer segmentation you have to find out with this product. But on just the curb appeal of it is kind of neat. It's kind of cool. I like that you are trying to fit it into a cup holder. That kind of makes sense. So, you know, based on the fact that we just had this conversation yesterday and you guys are trying to run with it, I really applaud that effort. So good job on that one.
Thank you, Jason. Katie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call people.
Yeah, so good job, guys, for your first time in front of a whole bunch of people and over Zoom. I would challenge you guys to really get to know who your customer is and really figure out what your business model is, because you're not a business if you don't make money. And it sounds like you're doing like upfront, it's kind of charity work right now. So figure out how you're going to make money, because if it's not making money, it's a hobby. That's what I've been told before. The other thing is I would have liked to seen some of your competition named. And one thing to kind of think about when you are kind of displaying your competition is using the Gartner grid or chart. And that is kind of a axes, an X and Y axes, and like how you compare to others. So you can put those bigger medical device companies on there and show how you are different. So I would challenge you to kind of look through and learn a little bit about that. And then I thought I had one other comment. I would want to see more numbers. So your deck has a lot of pictures in it. There's a lot of data, and you can dig into the data a little bit more and make it, you know, data is what sells products and businesses. So I would look to see how you can get more data to support support financials and support your customers and stuff like that.
Thank you. Jim Stitt. You're on mute.
There we are. Okay. One is some of where Katie was the first thing when you say is that it kind of like you're setting up as a not-for-profit, and I've been involved with several of them. I know that not-for-profit doesn't mean you don't make money because you disappear. You have to stay solvent, and as you get started, you're going to have major expenses, even in distribution and inventories and this type of stuff. But where does the cash come from, and how do you turn that around? So I think really spending more time on your model of what your pricing really can be. Certainly getting the question ahead is getting to know the customer. What is the customer? Who is the customer? And it could be in that I think through the employer, working through the employer, or even governmental. If you can get to the solution that's that good. Unfortunately, I think we're going to come out of this, which is probably good for Jason. We're going to come out of this at some point here, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I think we're going to have a society that's germophobic, and which it wasn't before. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people shaking hands 6 months from now. There's a whole lot of things that society is going to change. And so I think your timing, certainly the project you have and to be fitting into that, I think it's great. I commend you for that. Some concern over how much power it's going to take you to do this with the type of battery you have, the same thing that Jason brought up, to where you might even really want to be looking at, do you running this off of the car battery, which you got certainly a lot more wattage and amperage for cold amp to run in the bulb as to what it is, and what's the cost of the bulb, and what's the life of it, and what's replacement and breaking them. A lot of these UV lights, and I don't, is it recently, but they're not, some of these are not exactly cheap, the ones that can do the kind of work you can do. So, but great project, and certainly to have come up with this a week ago, and it's an area where a lot of people are going to be. And I think, as Katie said, who are your competition? What are you trying to compete with that says this is better, this is the end all, that you really need this, and you're going to feel better about getting in that car. I know when I go to the grocery store now, I mean, I get in, I'm wiping the steering wheel down, and what I touch in the grocery store, and I get in, we bring all the groceries in, lay them all out in the laundry room. We wipe them all down, everything in the laundry bag or in that basket, we wipe down before we take it into the kitchen, throw packaging away. So you're in a good space. So it's how you can push it. A lot of research, a lot of work in design, but great work.
Thank you.
Great thoughts.
Thanks, Jim. Doug.
Yeah, I kind of echo what I'm hearing from everybody. I like the innovation behind it. And Jason, I mean, knowing and Jared, I mean, where you guys were at the beginning of the semester, and then to kind of get to this space, I think is really great. I kind of agree with Katie. I'd like to see just a little bit more of the data behind it, some of the things that you're talking about. And then obviously when we're talking, it sounds like everybody kind of agrees you can upscale this a little bit. There might be some other ways to go here, but I think it's a great start for where you are. And kind of when Jason said on Touch of Modern, I was kind of like, wow, that's like exactly where a website where I could see this product live. Like that kind of hit the nail on the head. So there's something here, but understanding who your consumer is going to be, really diving into who the customers are and what the problem is, because there is a problem here. So yeah, I liked a lot of the things I heard.
Thanks, Doug. Connie.
I echo the comments that have been made, and I won't repeat my thoughts on those, but I'm looking at just the overarching right now. I think on the pitch itself, I think you did a good job of identifying an upcoming issue. Obviously more work on research down the road, but you're constantly researching when you're building anything or any business. Speed to market is important, and who you're actually selling to. But I think the concept of consumers' world are going to change. To Jim's point, we're going to all be changing our behavior. So I think as you approach the development of this design and this business, a good piece of this is changing that learned behavior. So I'm looking at it more from kind of an overarching kind of marketing subjective side. I totally agree with everyone else's comments on the financial and the technology and whatever, but as you pitch this, part of your business model is really addressing the behavior of a consumer because you want them to purchase your product or get engaged with your service. So otherwise, I think, I know it's been a short time. Great start. And thank you very much.